Good evening and welcome. My name is Karen Morton. I am the Northeast Regional Director for the Liberty Caucus, Republican Liberty Caucus of Florida. And we are delighted to be here this evening. This is the last candidate panel of the day, but one of the most important ones, actually, because we are talking to candidates who are running for superintendent of schools. And that is huge. That's important. We have 3 candidates on the ballot. Only 2 of them are here tonight. One candidate is David Brodsky, and we did reach out to him repeatedly, but he did not respond. We do have 2 people here with us. First of all, we have Ann Wiggins, and second, Charlie Van Zandt. So stay tuned, because they've got a lot of really, really interesting things to say. Our moderator for this evening is a retired Navy captain. He is a former congressional candidate for the 4th District, and he's the national spokesman for the We Can Be Heroes Foundation, Mr. Ryman Schoaf.
Thank you, Karen. Candidates, we appreciate you being here this evening. So I'm going to lay the ground rules down so you know exactly how this is going to take place. We will have a 2-minute opening. If it's okay with you, Mr. Van Zandt, ladies will be first. So we'll start with you when we get to that point, Mrs. Wiggins, okay? When we get to the Q&A, I will give you a heads up that the question is coming to you first, and then I'll let you know how much time you have to respond. When you get within 15 seconds of being to the end of your time, you'll get this sign. When your time is up, we're going to wave Old Glory at you. And if you decide to be revolutionary, just push right through, you're going to get the dreaded cowbell. Even though I'm the one asking the questions, when you answer the questions, you're not answering to me. I'm really a nobody here. You're answering the questions to the people that are going to vote for you. So the camera that's in front of you is where you need to look. Just assume that every seat is filled here looking at you for the right answers. But the camera there, and that's the live stream to everyone that's looking. Once we get into the Q&A, if you should decide to take a personal point to the individual that's running against you, that's certainly your prerogative. The individual that you call out will then have a 30-second chance to rebut. What we hope is that as we move through the questions, that you take the time to convince the voters that they need to vote for you instead of taking your time trying to convince the voters that they shouldn't vote for someone else. Okay, we hope that will be the case. So with that, we will start with the 2-minute opening comments. Mrs. Wiggins, you have the floor.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Republican.
Your microphone, please. Microphone, please.
I would like to thank you, the Republican Liberty Caucus, for inviting us to be here tonight. I would like to let you know, first of all, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. My husband was retired from the Air Force. We lived in many places around the world, and I must tell you, I was extremely happy with the life we led. We raised 5 children. I have been a lifelong Republican, and I was the first elected female superintendent of schools in Clay County. I was the superintendent of the year for the state of Florida, and while I was superintendent, our district was named President Bush's 8th point of light. During my tenure, I feel that I think a little bit out of the box. And I opened the Bannerman School, which is an alternative school that we have in Clay County. I found the Education Foundation with the help of the Committee of 100. I support staff, the contracts. I had all the contracts signed before we started school each year. And another thing that I had was the Superintendent's Forum. And I feel the Superintendent's Forum was extremely important for the Clay County business side. I invited business people within the county to come and have lunch, and we would discuss the needs of Clay County. not simply the ordinary things that they do in what is currently known as the CTE program, Career Technology Education. And back in the old days, it was called vocational education. But we talked about what kind of jobs we need in order to boost Clay County and to make sure that the children that live in Clay County have the opportunity for good jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Van Zant.
Hey, good evening, and thank you to the Northeast Florida Liberty Caucus, Republican Liberty Caucus, for having us and giving us a chance to introduce ourselves to the public. And my name's Charlie Van Zant. I've lived in Clay County since I was a child, grew up here, attended Keystone Heights Elementary, Keystone Junior Senior High. Met my bride of 26 years at the University of Florida. I joke with my wife, I've been married to the Army over 30 years and still proudly serve in the Army National Guard. I've went in as a private. I currently hold the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Went in as a helicopter mechanic. Now they've let me fly some of the most coolest, if that's a word, helicopters in the inventory, Blackhawks, Apaches. I've got 2 teenage boys in Keystone Heights High School, Luke and Wyatt, and we still live in Keystone Heights. Clay County welcomed the Van Zant family. We moved here when I was in elementary school because we needed to be closer to family. My mother was terminally ill with cancer, and everybody in the school system and the local community, the people that coached the teams that did Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, they all really looked after us. And I still kind of have that picture in my head of our school district as that city on the hill that serves students and families well. When I served as school superintendent from 2012 to 2016, we were able to serve our special needs children very well. We saw our academic achievement go up. We saw our graduation rates go up 10 points in 4 years. We saw our industry certifications go up by 15% in 4 years, giving jobs better than minimum wage jobs to students when they graduated with their high school diploma. So I'd be honored to serve again as superintendent and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Van Zant. Now we're done with the opening comments. Now we're going to move into the Q&A portion. And since this is the second group of candidates that we have that's centered around education, that ought to tell you how important education is. And because of that, we just want to let you know how we came up with these questions. We did not go to groups because groups tend to have agendas, and we didn't care for that. So what we did is we went to individuals. We went to individuals who have kids currently in the public school. They gave us questions. Then we went to individual parents who have kids in charter schools. We got their questions. And then we went to individuals who don't have any kids in any of the schools and asked them for questions. So as we move through this, you'll kind of get to feel which one's for the charter parents, which one for the public school, and which one for they don't have any kids at all. So we just want to give you some background there because these are the exact same questions that we asked the school board. And since one of you will be the possible superintendent, we wanted to give you the same questions with the same background as we did the school board earlier this morning. So Mr. Van Zant, first question is to you. You have 2 minutes to answer and respond. It is obvious to even the most casual observer that there is a lot of conflict on the school board. What will you do as superintendent to mitigate this conflict and promote civility and cooperation in order to get things done?
Well, on my campaign literature, I put out that I'm Clay County's conservative, consistent, collaborative leader. I did that for a reason. You know, I've been all over the world like you, Captain Shoaf, Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan. One of our missions in Afghanistan when I was embedded with the Special Forces was to stand up Afghan local police forces. I had to speak to those people through interpreters, and I say all that simply to say that there is no reason why people of the same general belief system cannot sit down and work together civilly. I've done it with people that have beliefs in total different political systems, total different religious ideologies, and I know that I can do it here. I've reached out to our sitting school board members. There's been controversy on the school board for more than a decade now, irregardless of who the superintendent is. I think the Clay County parents and voters are tired of that, and I think we'll see that that reflect in this election. But more than anything, I'm in this for our students. We were approaching 38,000 students, and my job will be to serve those students and their families, all of the students. Clay County does an excellent job of serving the students that are college bound. We always don't do the best job of serving the kids that don't go to college, and that makes up about 50% of our kids that graduate from high school. And we do that by focusing on opportunities for all of our students. Now, I will say this, while I was superintendent, the things that the school board are mandated to do under Florida statute, they took my recommendations on. Each year, by July 1st, they have to approve a budget. Those were 5-0 votes. Each year, they have to approve the curriculum and instructional plans. They approve those each year, 5-0 votes. So we can get there. We've done it.
Thank you, Mr. Van Zant. And just as a reminder, as we move forward, if you ever want me to repeat the question, I'll repeat it as many times as you want because, of course, we're here for you, okay? Do you need me to repeat the question, Ms. Wiggins, or you got it? Okay. Please use your microphone.
I have noticed, too, that there's a lot of conflict on the Clay County School Board, and it is an unfortunate situation. The first thing I think that I would like to see happen is, as I am making suggestions and finding things to put on the agenda, I would like to invite the different board members into my office to sit down and discuss these items so that they know what's going on, so that they're prepared to discuss them with each other and among the different members without actually getting into conflict. It's a very unfortunate situation when we have people who are supposed to be setting examples for what's happening in the Clay County school system, especially since everything is shown on television, for them to be sitting up there and not acting as civil as I think that they could act. I do believe that the best answer to all of these problems is good communication. If the board members will sit down and discuss them with me. They can't discuss them among themselves before the meeting. I understand that. But they could come in and discuss issues that I'm about to put on there, and perhaps it would run a little more smoothly. But even as Mr. Van Zandt has said, the most important thing that I will be doing is taking care of what we're supposed to be doing for our students. And actually, the conflict on the board should really be controlled by the board chair. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, Mrs. Wiggins, you'll go first. Okay, you'll go first for this next question. You have 2 minutes to respond. Due to the COVID, our families have experienced home-based learning, some for the very first time. Now that schools are preparing to reopen, what do you believe is the efficacy of exploring and promoting optional education model such as de-emphasizing the brick-and-mortar school for a virtual or home-based learning program? Do you think this is a good idea? Why or why not?
I would like to see us go back to the brick-and-mortar schools for the parents who feel that that is best for their children. I think that the virtual school or any other outside situation is something that we need to leave up to the parents. Parents are going to be emotionally involved when they talk about putting their children into a situation that could make them sick or ill, even though the percentage of these young children becoming ill from the virus is very low. I think what we could do is, first of all, follow the rules that are set down or the suggestions that are being set down by the CDC. I would like to see the children wear masks. I would like to see the teachers wear masks if they have to. The young children between ages, or like the first and second grade up to third grade, they're not going to deal with the mask. But I do think we could have the little plexiglass frames for that age student, as well as having them for the teachers. I strongly believe that we should have started planning for this a long time ago. And I also very strongly believe when we're dealing with situations such as this one, we should have had much more parent involvement as to what's going to go on and what they're going to be able to do as far as the situation. We must remember a lot of parents do not have the luxury of staying home with their children if their children are using virtual school. So we're going to have to look carefully and let them help us to make the decisions. Now, the high school students, I feel they're old enough and responsible enough in most cases, and that would be how their parents feel about them, to stay home by themselves and use the virtual school. But I think the younger children will probably have to have some kind of safe place for them to learn, and I think the brick and mortar school would probably be it.
Thank you for that. Mr. Van Zant?
Well, I think we've got to meet everybody where they are. There's as many opinions about COVID as there are parents with children in the school system. I've talked to many of them myself. I am one. I have 2 healthy teenage boys. I'm sending them back to brick and mortar school. They do better there than they do in distance learning situations. However, since well before COVID, they've each taken a couple of virtual classes a year. When I was superintendent, Florida law changed, and to graduate from high school, you had to have at least 1 credit of virtual school to even graduate. My 14-year-old son took a boater safety course, and he's actually a licensed boat driver. He got his hunting and fishing license through virtual learning. I just went and paid money and got mine. I mean, so he actually has licenses as a young teenager that I've never had. So I think a lot of that is good, and it's supplemental. I don't think it should be primary, especially for the younger students. When children come through our doors in pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, we've got to get them reading on grade level as soon as possible. The first few years they're in school, they got to learn to read. I've not seen anybody convince me of a great way to do that virtually. You have a 6-year-old at home, they're only looking at that screen for so long. Yes, they like to play video games, but no, they're not going to sit there and learn phonics-based reading and grammar by touching an iPad. It's not effective. So we have to meet people where they are. The kids whose parents want them to stay home and do virtual, we need to make accommodations for that. But I think the large majority want to be in brick and mortar, and we need to make that available in a safe way as possible.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Van Zant, you will answer the next question first. You'll have 2 minutes to answer the question. So that we know that Clay County is growing, and with that, we're going to have continued growth of the student population. And there are alternative education approaches, such as charter schools. The question that we received is there are programs that are allowed at the public schools that are not allowed at the charter schools. What this individual wants to know is, what is your views on charter schools and about opening up such things as band that you have at public school that you might not have at the charter schools and other activities?
Well, if I could clarify your terminology, Captain Schoaf, charter schools are public schools. They are part of the fabric of the Florida public school system. They're part of Florida statute. If somebody wants to have a charter school, they're to submit by May every year a letter of intent and a plan every year by August. And if they meet the parameters set forward by the state of Florida, then the school board is to grant the charter school. It becomes a public school, but it's not run and managed by the local school district. So charter schools are public schools. Just as an educator, I feel like I need to clarify that. I believe that all of us pay taxes, whether we homeschool our kids, virtual school, charter, public, private. We all should share in that tax base. Jimmy Weeks is going to send us a tax bill every year in Clay County, right? We're going to stop and buy gas. We're going to pay our 7-cent sales tax and our gas tax. So we should all have access to band, to ROTC, to football, to chorus, to baseball and cheerleading, whether you're homeschooled, charter school, Virtual school, that should be open to all Clay County residents, students. That is my firm belief that we should have full participation. And just FYI, if you're a charter school family, you need to understand that prior to 2012, before I became superintendent, there were 0 charter schools in Clay County. I recommended approval on 3 while I was superintendent that were approved. I recommended disapproval on 1 that the State Board of Education overturned, and it was later turned down. The reason I recommended disapproval on it's not because I'm anti-charter school, is because they didn't have their plan in order and their financial plan, most importantly, and it imploded on themselves, and the state came in and shut it down because they couldn't pass a financial audit. So they do have to be squared away, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Mrs. Wiggins? Absolutely. So we know that there is growth coming in Clay County because Clay County is a great place to live. And with that, we're going to have continuing growth of the student population. So there are alternative education approaches, one of those being charter schools. So the question this individual wants to know is, what is your thoughts on charter schools? And there are some programs, just like Mr. Van Zandt said, charter schools is public schools. But the question from this individual is, there's some programs that you have at public school, like band, that you don't have at the charter school. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, as Mr. Van Zandt already stated, they are part of the public school system, and I believe that they get FTE allowances, just like the conventional public school gets, and I believe that they can use their money the way that they see fit as far as that goes. I agree that all the parents and even the non-parents, the taxpayers of Clay County, we all pay taxes. We all want a good school system. If there are parents that feel that the opportunities that are offered in a charter school are more beneficial for them and their particular families and the way they want their children raised, I see no problem with that particular situation. But I do think the original concept for charter school really was based on the idea of putting these schools in areas that were having trouble with the regular public school system. And I understand that the philosophy has changed, but I do think that Clay County has a very good public school system. For parents that want their children in charter schools, I have no objection, but I really don't think we need charter schools based on the original concept. Clay County has a good school system, but of course the parents have the opportunity to put the children where they want, and all the taxpayers are supportive.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Wiggins, you'll be the first to answer the next question. You have 2 minutes. Some claim that the school system has contributed heavily towards a societal shift where a growing number of young people express disappointment and even hatred toward their own country. They have a positive view of socialism and want the federal government to have unlimited authority to implement progressive goals. Explain, in your opinion, what could be done better to teach our students in Clay County how to love their country and how to be good Americans.
That's kind of near and dear to my heart. The first thing that I think we have to do is put a lot more emphasis on the history of the United States. One of the studies that came out of the Korean War was most of the defectors that we had during the war from the United States did not understand American history, they didn't understand American civics, and they did not understand the philosophy behind American lives. That was the study. I know it was a long time ago, but I have never forgotten reading about that particular study. We need to put more emphasis on American history and the achievements that we have. We need to put more emphasis on civics. Now, I know these subjects are taught in the schools, but I think it's the way we teach them that are important as to the concept that the student comes away with. Talk about the great things that we have done instead of constantly looking at some of the less than great things that we have done that are right now being part of the turmoil that's going on in our country. People involved do not understand a lot of the history of the United States and where it originally came from. And I think that is very important. But another thing that's important, I think, is we have to publicly display support for the country. When we have famous, well-known football stars or movie stars or anybody else out there showing disrespect for the American flag, these young minds see that, and these are, to a large extent, heroes in their mind, and they follow this. And I think I would like to see more emphasis put on, if you don't want to respect the American flag, don't come out on the football field, the baseball field, or wherever it is, and show your disrespect.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Van Zant?
Well, I'll just tell you what I did. In the time I was superintendent, I put a huge emphasis on American history and civics. In fact, I had to protect Clay County from a particular textbook company that had textbooks that they wanted us to adopt that promoted American history in a way that every time we stubbed our toe and had a black eye, it was emphasized, and every time that we did great things, it was de-emphasized. And in a way that took political stances and not just teaching a fair and objective stance of history. So I told them the things that were just clearly not factual, and they rewrote a version of their American history book that I brought to the school board for adoption. During that time, I had a group of parents that wanted access to our instructional materials, and I gave that access to them, and they made recommendations to me. Secondly, Mr. Bill Gay of W.W. Gay, who's now passed away, him and Cecil Powell offered me as many books, little booklets called Our Founding Documents, as I wanted, and those books had the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, all of our founding documents in them. Mayflower Compact. I supplied those to every civics teacher in Clay County for the entire 4 years I was superintendent. I'm not sure if that practice is still being done, but I wanted those students, and the students got to keep those books and take them home at the end of their 8th grade civics course, or 7th grade, I think is where we used to teach it, so that they would have a true understanding of that. We brought the Vietnam Memorial Wall, the traveling one, to Green Cove Springs Junior High. I put on an American history and American exceptionalism conference like you would do a science fair or a spelling bee. Those are the things we need to keep doing.
Thank you. Mr. Van Zant, you'll be the first to answer this question. It's really a yes or no question, but we're going to give you 30 seconds in case if you want to give any amplifying information to your yes or no answer, okay? So the question is, Mr. Van Zant, are you in favor of the half-cent sales tax increase for the schools on the November ballot?
No, but I'll take the rest of my time to amplify that. This is the third time I've been asked. No item goes to the school board for approval without the recommendation of the superintendent. Our temporary superintendent chose to not come tonight. He's in favor of that, so since he's not here to speak for himself, I just would like to go on record, and that is a matter of public record, and you can go to Charlie Van Zant for Superintendent in Facebook, and you can see me answer that question, and you can see him answer that question in his own words.
Thank you. Mrs. Wiggins?
Yes, I am in favor of the half-cent sales tax. Clay County has a $350 million repair bill that it must take care of. Now, I am well aware, and I'm sure you are too, that didn't come about overnight. But we need the money to take care of that particular situation, among many others. But that one stands out to me because I would like to make sure that all of our schools are really as safe as they can possibly be.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Wiggins, you'll be the first to answer the next question, and you'll have 1 minute. Now, this is kind of a two-part question, so we broke it up because there's quite a bit of amplifying information until we get to the question that was given to us. So 2 years ago, there was a millage increase which was approved to provide additional funds for schools and for the students and for other services. Those other services turned out to be health insurance for the teachers and a new school police force. However, this rate increase sunsets in 2 more years. This is a specific question. Part 1. With property appraisals continuing to increase, Are you in favor of renewing the millage increase when it sunsets in 2 years?
I really do not want to answer that directly unless I can explain to you that I think we need to look at what's happening. One of the things that I am advocating when I am superintendent is that we do an audit, not because I think anything criminal is going on, but we need to look at the money and how it is being spent and where it is being spent. So that would be part of the reason I would like to make sure, before we ask people to increase their taxes, that we actually have a specific use for it. I believe that we need to start letting the taxpayers of Clay County know exactly where their money is spent, and not being put up like, we're going to do Project X and we need to increase taxes, and then we end up doing Project X and Y together. That has got to cease, and we have to pay attention to where the money is being spent.
Since that's such an important question, do you want more time on that? Because if you do, I'll give Mr. Van Zant more time. Or do you feel like you've had plenty of time to appropriately answer that? I feel like I have. Okay, fair enough.
I feel like I have answered.
Then we'll stick with a minute. Now over to you, Mr. Van Zant.
Wasn't in favor of the property tax 2 years ago. Certainly wasn't in favor of the way it was marketed. County employees with county money came on county time, installed signs on my kids' school property and the other 42 schools in Clay County to advocate to me, the taxpayer, to raise my own taxes. That's just wrong, like rain at a picnic. I've never been in favor of a property tax. When I was superintendent, I took over after the recession with the worst fund balance in Clay County history and built it back from a 1% fund balance, basically our savings account, to 3.5%. They've only come up 1 more percent in some of the best budget years, in actually the record budget years that Florida has ever had. And the reason they're pushing the temporary superintendent and the majority of the board for this sales tax so hard this year, and even last year when they sued the county commission, is so they don't have to have 2 sales tax increases 2 years from now when it's time to renew the property tax.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Van Zant, you will answer this next question first, and this is in line with the 2-part question that we begin with. So 2 years ago, a millage increase was approved to provide an additional funds to the school to use for the students and other services. Those other services turned out to be health insurance for the teachers and a new school police force. And again, we stated that this increase sunsets in 2 years. The second part to this question is, do you believe that the school police force was a good idea? Should it be kept? How do we continue to pay for it since we're going to have a sunset coming up? And the other part of this, and it's just a discussion on your part, the first group that we had this morning was the sheriff candidates. We asked them this question, and every candidate said that if they get elected, they are willing to work with the school board, work with the school superintendent to either keep the force, get rid of the force, bring in the deputies. They are willing to do and accommodate you in any way possible that is best for the budget and best for making sure our students are safe. Do you want me to give you the specifics that we're looking for there, Mr. Van Zant? Or do you think you got it?
I think I've got it. And I caught a little bit of the sheriff's debate this morning, and in general, the most dangerous thing about the whole situation we have now with the school board police department is that the school board and the county sheriff's office and the school board police department are not on the same team. They don't communicate well. They don't have a collaborative relationship. They don't have a good memorandum of agreement. They're not cross-talking. They're not on literally on the same secure communication frequencies. My 2 children in Keystone Heights High School are less safe than they were 2 years ago with the Clay County Sheriff's deputies. Without the full capacity of the Sheriff's Office, SWAT, investigations, all that, they are just less safe. You can't convince me that a 45-person police department is better than a 600-something county sheriff's department with all the divisions of a sheriff's department. Secondly, I do support every law enforcement officer. Every law enforcement officer that we have working for the school board police department is a certified law enforcement officer. The first thing I will do if elected, even if I'm elected on August 18th and don't go into office until November, I will reach out to whoever is our elected sheriff to be, or if it's the current sheriff, and I will start mending those fences. I've had a good relationship with every Clay County sheriff since Jennings Marie in the 1980s, and we will rebuild that relationship. If the school board decides to keep the school board police department, that is entirely their decision under the Florida law. I can only make recommendations as a superintendent. But in 31 years in the Army, I have learned a thing or two about safety and risk assessments, and I will constantly be making risk assessments and making recommendations to the school board to improve safety for our students and faculty on every campus. But I do believe that Clay County taxpayers and Clay County schools would be better served with the Clay County Sheriff's Office protecting our schools. But that is in no way a reflection of my thoughts on the professionalism or competence of the school board policemen.
Thank you. Mrs. Wiggins?
Yes. One of the first things that I would like to do, because there is so much misinformation or disinformation out there about what's going on between the Sheriff's Department and the Clay County School System, the Clay County School System Police, the first thing that I would like to do is call together the people involved. I would also like, and by the people involved, I mean the superintendent, the sheriff, and Ken Wagner, who I believe is the chief of the police for the school system. I would like us to sit down and discuss exactly what the role of each of the different departments is supposed to be. I think we need to make that public, because I think part of what's happening is we have one person thinking one thing, another person thinking something else, and it causes a little bit of confusion and turmoil. The other thing, though, that I really strongly believe is because of the Parkland incident, parents feel more secure thinking or knowing that they have a policeman right on the property to help take care of their children. As I stated before when I was talking, parents get emotionally involved with what's happening to their children, and this is a big concern. If they feel that the police being on school property is an asset, I think it's something that we should really continue consider, because unhappy parents are not going to help the Clay County school system. Now, I do know that the system still has a very good working relationship with the Green Cove Springs City Police and with the Orange Park City Police, and they help with reciprocation of things that are going on. But the safety of the children is most important, and if we can work out public information, I think we will be ahead of the game.
Thank you for that. Mrs. Wiggins, you'll be the first to answer this next question. So let's assume that there is no sales increase, and so there's no extra money for the schools. Is there a legislative solution that should be pursued to give school districts more flexibility to move money between funds to pay for maintenance or other budget shortfalls? And you have 1 minute, ma'am. 1 minute for this.
Okay, that's a very interesting question, because one of the things that I have just been considering myself is because of what's happening with the virus and what's happening to the school system, I really believe that the Florida legislature could sit down and look at other ways to help us improve the school system. The most important thing that we do is to educate our children. The type of education that we give to our children is what is going to run our lives the older we get. And so I do think that there should be some kind of organizational get-together to look at funding the schools or giving them extra money, even if it's on a temporary basis.
Thank you. Mr. Van Zandt?
Well, this year, the Commissioner of Education, the legislature pretty much did waive all the rules as the legislature was coming out of session, and you could spend what education terminology we call categoricals. You could take transportation money, buy computers with it. You could spend money out of this pot on that pot. You think about it, we stopped running buses and cafeterias back in March, and they were free to spend that money however they needed. I'm not sure if that's already sunset moving into this budget year, July 1st. But for 18 years as a school board member and as a school superintendent, every trip I made to Tallahassee, I was always asking for two things. I was asking for more autonomy, which is what you're getting at, more flexibility in how I spent the money. Whatever money they gave me, I wanted Clay County Superintendent and School Board to decide how that got carved up, and more money for job skills training.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Van Zant, you will answer the next question first. You have 2 minutes to answer the question. In recent years, school boards across the country have emphasized college prep curriculums and have moved away from what we would call, and we're showing our age here, the old vocational programs. Now college graduates can't get jobs while high-paying positions for electricians, plumbers, welders, and constructionists, and etc. go unfilled because there aren't enough trained workers. An article was sent to us about a young man who graduated from high school, went to college, completed his first semester, hated it, quit, sitting at home, is watching one of the welding advertisements on television, goes to the school, gets his degree, gets hired by an oil company, and he's 21 years old. He's making $120,000 a year. Don't know about you, but when I was 21, I was not making $120,000 a year. So this is the question, is what should the school superintendent do to provide career-ready paths and to ensure that graduates can earn a living? And if you don't think that career-ready paths is appropriate, state your reason why. Mr. Van Zant.
We should do what I did in 2012. When I became superintendent, I took a look at the students that were in our academies. 10% of our 12,000 high school age students were in academies. Those students had better attendance rates, lower discipline rates, and higher industry certification rates. Our industry certification simply means that's a job ticket. So at like Orange Park High School, Oakleaf, Fleming Island, we had certified nursing assistant programs. So literally they do their academics at school. They walk across the street from Orange Park High to Orange Park Medical Center and do their clinicals. And they graduate with a certificate and can get hired immediately as a high school graduate with that certificate. We had aviation, medicine, carpentry, electrical wiring, the Architecture, Construction, Engineering Academy. Our industry certifications in Clay County rose 83%. We were one of the top 5 in Florida within 4 years, but we pursued that. That was one of the things I just mentioned I asked for extra funding for from the legislature. So you have to speak the governor's love language, whoever the governor is. And Rick Scott was jobs, jobs, jobs. I want to create 700,000 jobs in 7 years. So I reached out to the business community. I reached out to the development board here in Clay County. And I had all of them partner with us, spend time mentoring our kids, write letters to the governor. We preempted vetoes. Rick Scott loved to veto things too. So we started in August and September doing what I called veto-proofing our legislative appropriations ask, and we wrapped it in jobs. And that's what parents for those 50% of kids that aren't going to go to college already want. By the time a kid gets in junior high, a family knows, I know if my kids are going to go to college or not. I know if my wife and I have made appropriate financial decisions for them to go to college or bought Florida prepaid or whatever. So we've done that. We've done that successfully, and I will reemphasize that. It's kind of gone to the wayside.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Van Zant. Mrs. Wiggins.
As I mentioned in my opening, I started what I call the Superintendent's Forum, and this was very much following along the lines of what we're discussing here. I would ask the people to come in, the business people, and we would sit down and talk about what was needed to promote Clay County business-wise. I understand we almost set up a caste system in this country for years. It was you had to go to college. I remember people coming up to me and saying, and what college did you go to? Well, at the time, I wasn't in college. But the point being, I have a doctorate in education, and my automobile mechanic makes more money by the hour than I do with my doctorate in education. So the point being, we need to put emphasis and make it special for people to be, for lack of terminology, get their hands dirty, whatever it is. But we have set up this system where we really have divided the education system into you either go to college or you don't go to college. And if you didn't go to college, you know, there must be something that just isn't 100% correct. But I would push to go back to, as you called it, the old system as opposed to the new system, which is called career technical education. But we do need to get back to getting people doing things with their hands, if that's the easiest way to explain it.
Okay, thank you for that. That now ends the question and answer part of the panel. Now we're going to go to the 2-minute close. Mrs. Wiggins, since we started with you in the opening, we'll have the last now be first. Mr. Van Zant, you have 2-minute close. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for having us. I loved the questions. We need to reemphasize history, civics, vocational education. We shouldn't be scared to call it vocational education. Again, I'm Charlie Van Zant. I've chosen to raise my family here in Clay County, in the Clay County school system. I still serve in the National Guard at Camp Blanding here in Clay County. I love this place. It's my home. This is the job. It's not a job. It's really a calling on my life. If elected and I go back into office in November, I will have less time, more stress, and make less money than I do right now. I can't. Somebody was asking me why I'm doing this and trying to explain it to them today. I'm like, I can't write it down on a piece of paper and make it make sense to you or I, either one. It's just what I know I'm supposed to be doing. But I do believe very much in truth in advertising. I'm the only one sitting on the stage or in this race that is led in the modern area of school accountability here in Florida with great success. I'm one of two of us that are sitting on the stage and in the race that have been lifelong Republicans. My other male opponent, the temporary superintendent, only recently became a Republican. He was a lifelong Democrat. But you wouldn't know that by his TV advertisements or his mailers, and I think the people in Clay County need to know that Mr. Brodsky was a Democrat until very recently. And I wish he was here to defend that. I'd love for him to have his 30 seconds, because I'd really like to ask him who he voted for in 2008, Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, but I guess I'm not going to get that opportunity to ask him face-to-face in a forum. But again, I will protect your children. I have a lot of safety background in the military, and I will protect not only their physical space, but I will protect their eyes and ears and what they see and learn on Clay County school property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Van Zant. Mrs. Wiggins.
Well, I am in this race because I was asked by many people to come into this race. When Mr. Davis was thinking about moving out of Clay County, people came to me and asked me to consider it. And in the beginning, I didn't know. But once he actually made the move, I decided, yes, it would be interesting to get back in the race and see exactly what's happening in the school system and push it forward. I agree that this, to me, is not a job. To me, this is something that I just love, that I want to do. One of the things a lot of people do not know about me is I am Dr. Wiggins, but I am also a high school dropout. I was always a person who voiced their opinion even when I was in high school, and of course that turned out to be a place where I was always in trouble. So when I turned 16, which was the legal age to leave school in New York, I left school. Well, years later, when I met my husband, we got married and started having children. I thought I would not be a very good example. So I went back and went through the GED, the AA, the bachelor's degree, the master's degree, and the doctorate. And it has left me with this feeling that I have something to offer that nobody else, at least not of the three of us, has to offer. I understand the children that are having trouble in school. I don't mean the really bad type kids, but those similar to me that have feelings that they wish to express, that they have trouble expressing them, and that's part of the reason we opened the Bannerman School. These are smart young men and women, but they need a different kind of setup. They need to be allowed to voice their opinions in a much better way. But I want to thank you very much for inviting us. I enjoyed the questions. I hope I answered them to the best of your understanding. And thank you very much for having us.
So that concludes our forum for our superintendent of school candidates. We appreciate you coming so late in the evening. Apparently, we wanted to make it easier on the school board candidates. We brought them at a nice leisurely morning hour, but we do appreciate you coming here so late at night. And how about a round of applause for the folks that are here for our candidates? And we also appreciate your kindness and your professionalism. We really do appreciate that. So don't forget that Clay County voters can register and vote in our straw poll at tallyed.com. That's TALLYED.com. Once you register and get logged in, click on the RLC straw poll ballot, please. Also, early voting for primary starts in Clay County on Thursday, August 6th. Election day is Tuesday, August 18th. And on behalf of the Republican Liberty Caucus, thank you for watching and being an informed voter. Educate yourself, inform yourself, and please vote on Tuesday, August 18th. Our country is depending on it. Thank you very much.